The Legiones Astartes. They shall be my finest warriors. These men who give of themselves to me. Like clay, I shall mold them, and in the furnace of war, forge them. They shall be of iron will and steel sinew. In great armor I shall clad them, and with the mightiest weapons they will be armed. They will be untouched by plague or disease. No sickness shall blight them. They shall have such tactics, strategies, and machines that no foe can best them. They are my bulwark against the terror. They are the defenders of humanity. They are my space marines, and they shall know no fear. The Emperor of Mankind. Hey friends, it's me, the Ebony Otaku, the well-rounded nerd. Yeah, I had visions of wearing a costume for every October video, but you know how long it takes to put on a costume? I got to have a reason. I'm going to attempt it for a couple more videos, although I do love my Skelly hoodie. It's giving me life. But yeah, I know, I failed. I tried. We'll try again next year. But we are still in the month of Halloween. And I'm doing a lot of just Space Marine-y, mostly around Fulgrim and Fabius, because come on, they are the best Warhammer topics when it comes to Halloween. There may be others. I've not found them. But today, look, check it out. Look. I'm just bragging right now. I have a mic. I know, I'm probably really loud, because on a normal day, without projection, I am loud. I'm sorry, not projection, amplification. She can project on her own. I can talk to like an 80,000 seat theater and like whisper from the stage and be heard. Theater major, those are the things we learned. So if it's too loud, please let me know. I think my last video before this, I used a mic too. It just came in. I'm very excited. It's supposed to improve quality. Is it improving quality or blowing your eardrums out? But back to the study at hand. So I think the horrors of the Imperium are just so appropriate for October because so much of sci-fi focuses on the shiny. It's going to be so great and beautiful. Is it? I mean, you've seen Earth now, right? Like we're all of a sudden going to become like universally awesome to each other, replicate food. There'll be no sickness, no this, no that, no poverty, and everyone's going to agree and get along. I'm looking at you, Star Trek. Not that I love Star Trek. We all know that Beckett Mariner is me, and I am Beckett Mariner. She is my spirit animal. Now I grew up watching The Next Generation, but let's be real, that is a shiny, a beautifully crafted version of what the future could be. And even in Star Trek, when Earth itself is unified and now there's a federation of planets, there are still enemies to be had. Everyone doesn't want to be in the Federation. And remember, history is written from the perspective of the winners. And they are often encountering other races that want nothing to do with this thing they call a federation. They don't want their technology. They don't want their medicine. They don't want their culture, even though the federation is just, all welcoming and all of this. It's really interesting and it's coming back to the Space Marines, don't worry. But when watching Strange New Worlds, there is a magnificent episode in the second season, so minor spoilers, where the first officer is put on trial basically for who she is. She is of a people who at birth, they practice genetic enhancement. And to become part of the Federation, they were going to have to abandon those ways because the Federation doesn't allow that. And her people didn't do it. And they were treated very badly. But you also have to remember that no one gets to choose where they're born. And she was born into that culture. But she ends up becoming an officer, a decorated officer, one of the best Starfleet's ever seen. And they put her on trial for basically hiding her identity. And it's one of the best done commentaries on social stuff that I've ever seen. It is so well written, so well acted. It surprises you. It wrong foots you because you think it's going to go one way and it goes a whole other way. And the way they juxtapose the characters against one another, it just, chef's kiss to that episode. But showing that, hey, this person just simply exists. They did not choose their culture. They did not choose where they were from, and you're going to punish them for it. I thought the Federation was above that. So even at its best moments, humans are still going human. Because let's be real clear, it was the humans putting on this trial against somebody. Let's be real clear. So even if all the humans of Earth were to unite and be like, oh, yay, we're just having a happy human party, we gonna find an enemy to hate. The enemy of the enemy is my friend. And that's just how our nature is. And that's the nature of humans that the Eldar saw. That's the nature they're so afraid of. While we can be artistic, loving, produce great works, we can also be pretty terrible. And we like to spread our terribleness far and wide so that everyone can experience the terrible. It's just how we are. We can't help ourselves. And in going to the stars, would we show up in the stars as presented in Star Trek as this pristine, unified race who is bringing forth their freedom, ideals, and technology to the stars? Or would it be more like Star Wars, which, by the way, you can love both. We love both here. Would it be more like Star Wars? Yeah, that's the child. I'm a big squishmallow. He's great. Will we come to the stars and rather than unifying, we oppress? An imperium is established, a ruling class that rules over other planets that are subject to the ruling class. That seems more accurate. And I think that's why those two versions of fandom don't always see eye to eye, because one's looking at the glossy possibility of this is what should be. And Star Trek has a less realistic view of humans than Star Wars does. Star Wars is like, humans are terrible, blah. When you watch the first three movies, and when I say the first three, I mean episodes 4, 5, and 6, not the chronology, not the current ones and not the middle ones that were really the first three. Yeah, not that. Episodes 4, 5, and 6, when we first meet Luke and Leia and Han and all of these characters. And, at the time of filming this, we have lost James Earl Jones. So rest in power. He was one of our mightiest patrons of the arts, a great performer, a great person, no scandals, just everything you could want. And he made it to 93, so good for him. But when you're watching all of these characters be introduced, you can feel the grittiness of the world. It's dirty. Part of that is just movie making at that time. Everything feels real because, well, it was real. They had to make it all. But it feels dirty. It feels grimy. It feels disorganized. It feels real. And it has a different impact. And I think that's why some of the newer Star Wars stuff doesn't hit the same way, because it doesn't feel real, or they're cleaning it up too much. It's too clean. That it's not a clean version of the future that we see in Star Wars. It's how humans would really be. And I think that brings us back to Warhammer and the Space Marine. Because if humanity really was to look to the stars, say so many of us left this world behind to establish new communities on new planets, new religions, new philosophies, new governments, new social structures, new everything, forgetting that we even were human. How do you unify that which is completely disorganized? I would liken it unto the unification of China. We say China wrong, by the way. We say everything wrong. I'm not even talking about accents at that point. I'm just like, y'all know Japan. That's not the name of the country. It's Nippon. It's like, how do we get Japan out of Nippon? Can we at least try to say the actual name of the place instead of changing it? Anyhow, but when you look at China, our land, if you go back in, the Mongol history, the dynasty histories, what it took to unify that giant geographic area that today we call China was a massive undertaking. These were people groups that had, a similar genetic root, but they had spread out so far over time that they were disjointed in functioning as a unified society. There was no Chinese. They were Han. They were Zhou. They were Mongol. They were not Chinese. They were their people groups. You can look at a lot of African nations that way today. Y'all know Africa is a continent, not a country, right? Um, but in a lot of African countries, within the country, there is still tribalism. Okay, yes, I am Nigerian, but I'm also Igbo. I am of this particular tribe. South America is that way as well. While there are huge countries, Brazil being one of the biggest land countries, not the biggest population, but land mass, yes. Um, Still a lot of tribes living out in places. And even when you look at the First Nations of the Americas, of North and South America and Central America, the whole side of my planet, you look at them and go, man, you look real like Northern Siberian in the face. Or you look real Mongolian in the shoulders. Well, there is a genetic root there. They did cross over the Bering Strait at one point, then it was gone. And then there's that genetic and cultural separation over time. So to an extent, when the East came over to the West, they were looking at distant relatives, but the people were so far apart, so separated, that as humans, when we get that far from our original, we don't look at each other the same. Like, I can't be called African. I'm American. I am 300 years at least separated from the continent of Africa. So what's well in here, there's a root, but my cultural identity is with the country and place where I was raised and socialized. That's what happens with humans. And the emperor is great. I have a lot of debates about the emperor of mankind. We're gonna get to him. The emperor of mankind caused all of his own problems. He's like alcohol. He's the solution to and cause of all the problems, because he had it in his head that all of these disparate groups of people, he could force them to unite. And if there's one thing you can't make humans do, is you cannot make humans like other humans just because you told them to. I'm gonna leave that right there. That's not how that works. That has to come from within. His hope was just for compliance. Show up, look at me and my gold. I'm the emperor, love me, and they comply. That happens quite a bit actually, because this big god thing shows up in a starship and lands on your planet and wants to take over, and he's got an army that you can't beat. Yeah, okay, yeah, we're in. We're in. But what about those that are non-compliant? What about those that aren't just going to bend the knee to this unknown God? The emperor is not God, but he is. What about those who like their culture? What about those who like their religion, their society the way it is? Sound familiar? It gets real manifest destiny in the imperium of mankind. But that's why we love fiction. It lets us look at those things that are uncomfortable to think about and talk about, and take a step back to protect our emotions and our relationships. Fiction's beautiful. Highly recommend fiction, especially military sci-fi. It's good stuff. What was he going to do? How was he going to conquer those worlds which could not be conquered? Or if he made the decision they weren't human enough and that their genes should not pollute humanity. Sound familiar? He raised an army, a terrible army, the creation of the Space Marine. Conflict involving genetically modified warriors such as Dread War Rites and Ironsides, have been a constant for thousands of years on ancient Terra as part of the wars between the techno-barbarian tribes and the tyrant lords of city-states. The Emperor's own gene-enhanced soldiers, the Thunder Warriors, named for the thunderbolt and raptor's head heraldry of their master, proved superior to them all during the wars for unification. The Thunder Warriors were the first open display of the Emperor's strategic and scientific genius. They were unprecedented in their physical strength and endurance and had been gene programmed to be resistant to both biochemical and psychic warfare. They were an army unlike any that came before them. Despite their many victories in the Unification Wars, they were far from perfect, suffering from both mental and biological degeneration as their own superhuman physiques turned against them after an unpredictable span of years in what was speculated to have been a planned and programmed obsolescence. It seems obvious in retrospect that the Emperor knew early on that a more permanent and stable force of enhanced warriors was needed. So even while the Thunder Warriors waged war in their early days, the Emperor gathered about him an order of savants and gene rights and constructed new genetic laboratories deep in the vast dungeons of his fortress. Labor there went on for decades in absolute secrecy to create the Legiones Astartes, the Space Marines. Into their creation went all the secret history and lore of the Age of Strife, hard wisdom gained through the successes and failures of the prototype Thunder Warriors, and the Emperor's own inimitable genius. The Emperor's Legions project was created. The Emperor's Legiones Astartes project created an army of toughened warriors, iron of arm and will, that were unflinchingly loyal to him. Quickly, the process was refined and systematized, and the numbers of these new enhanced warriors, at first armed and armored as the Thunder Warriors had been, grew swiftly, and they were organized into 20 regiments. The regiments expanded rapidly into 20 legions of thousands of warriors, with the intake of new blood from the areas of Terra that had already joined cause with the Emperor. The legions eclipsed the Thunder Warriors as soon as they were armored in unadorned gray ceramite battle plate, becoming known as the Angels of Death. And each competed with the others to earn honors, glories, and eventually names and heraldry of their own. With his Legiones Astartes, victory followed quick. Victory followed victory, becoming a righteous crusade, and the Emperor became the single ruler of Terra, the first in uncounted millennia. Once old Earth was unified, the Emperor's ambitions turned to the stars, and with his Space Marine legions, he subdued the gene rights of Luna, forced the Mechanicum of Mars to sue for peaceful unity, and brought the Saturnine Ordos and the Jovian shipyards under his banner. With Sol unified, the Space Marines confirmed their destiny as the principal fighting force by which the Emperor would liberate the galaxy from the depredations of the alien and the malignancy of superstition and oppression. So he's going to free them from oppression by oppressing them. You got that? You heard that? The Space Marines are a horrifying creation. The Emperor needed an army that would always win. And he's real Princess Bubblegum about it. Yeah, I said what I said. She created them rattle balls and went, this was a mistake, and took them all out. Y'all remember that episode? That's what the Emperor did. y'all know Princess Bubblegum is like the like low-key villain of Adventure Time. Like, she's evil. I love her. Didn't say I don't love her, but the heifer's evil. She has no loyalty to anybody. All right, she will take you out. And the Emperor's the same. He created an army, got Terra under control, and went, I can do better. Got rid of them and replaced them with the Space Marines. And the Space Marines end up becoming the gene sons of their Primarchs. And initially, the Space Marines were taken from Earth, Terra, in the future, because, Earth, that word's gone. I wonder if some other planet out there they named Earth. Anyway, I digress. But he takes men. Oh, they're all men. All the Space Marines are men. Get over it. From Terra, and he turns them into something else. The Space Marines can barely be called human when they're done working on them. Whether it's the ones that were crafted on Terra or those that were plucked from the worlds from which their Primarchs were raised. They are put through hideous trials as children. They're taken from their homes as young as possible. That way they forget they had mothers and fathers. They forget they had families. They forget they had social connections. They don't need to know any of that. I mean, we even see that on Cadia. It's not as harsh on Cadia, although it's still pretty rough, because Cadia, is staring at the Eye of Terror. So they raise that whole planet as soldiers to fight chaos. But even they remember their parents. They have memories of their childhood. When they return to Cadia, they recognize places that they're trying to save from their childhood, their outposts, the things that they learn. The Space Marines don't remember any of that. So the first thing is indoctrination on a level that I hope humans are never, ever capable of doing. They forget basically that they were human. They're barely even fighting for humanity. They're so indoctrinated. They're fighting for the Emperor. And at some point, half of them are fighting for Horus. And then they go full Fulgrim and Fabius, and they're just fighting for themselves. They just want to watch the world burn for the sake of it burning. There's levels to this. So first, the Emperor takes their humanity from them. To protect humanity, he steals the humanity of some. So they don't think like people anymore. They don't look at children and go, "Oh, aren't they cute?" They look, "Is that a future soldier?" That's what they see. They don't look at art and go, "Wow, what a beautiful painting." They go, "That's a thing on a wall." That's what makes Fulgrim's Legion so unique, because he's the only one who's really all about the beauty. What are we protecting if there's no art at the end of this war? What were we fighting for? The rest of the Primarchs don't think like that. They are just in war because they were made for war. They war. If what they produce ends up being beautiful, that's just a byproduct of producing a beautiful weapon. Ferrus Manus, I'm looking at you. Ferrus Manus produces the most beautiful weapons you've ever seen, but he didn't produce them to be beautiful. They're beautiful because he produced a perfect weapon. There's a difference. So first, he takes their humanity. He conquers their minds and their hearts and their will. They forget that they're actually human, that they were birthed from a woman. They forget all of that. And then he molds them, makes them go through trials to prove their worth. There are planets where they make the children climb up mountains, jump over lava, swim in acid to test their worth. And so many of the young, promising, possible Space Marines, they perish in the trials. And they don't care that they perish, because that means they just were never strong enough to be a Marine. And if they weren't strong enough to be a Marine, well, they don't want their genes polluting the gene pool anyway. If you take out all the people, where are you gonna get more Marines? Anyway, it's like them cultures that were like real anti-female. It's like, oh, it sucks to be a girl. Yeah, but who's your son's gonna marry and produce a boy if there are no women? Like, if you go and if you take out half the boys in the trials, who are the women going to have babies with so that you can come recruit more Space Marines? Anyway, there's a circle that never ends. But they break them down physically. First, they break you down mentally, then they break you down physically. And then, once you make it through all the physical and mental trials, now they start poking and prodding you. You're going to be taller. No, not just a little bit taller. I'm 6'1". The average Space Marine's like 9.5 feet tall. That's a little Space Marine. Like the Primarchs are like 15, 20 feet tall. All right, they are literal giants. So not only do they grow them up in stature, but they start doing things like making them impervious to radiation. They can drink acid and it just be like a soda. You know, they can breathe toxic air. They add lungs to them. They add hearts to them. They enhance their eyes. Like they're monsters. They Frankenstein these men. They fillet them open, pick, poke, pick, and sew them back up and go, you're a Marine. One of the readings I did, I believe it's going to be the one right before this one, is in the creation of a dreadnought and another Marine who's being worked on by Fabius Bile at the behest of Fulgrim. Although we think Fulgrim has forgotten he even asked for this warrior to be restored. And Fabius has the head of the Marine he's working on a shelf while he works on his body. This is in the Angel Exterminatus. And the head's talking to him while his body's filleted open being worked on. That's the future in Warhammer 40k, where you can look down, be fully conscious, have a conversation with the surgeon working on your body. The horror, the true horror of the 41st millennium isn't war. It's the impression of freedom for all when they're really just swapping one oppressive source for another. Join the Imperium of Man and be free. But I'm going to enslave your sons to my army. You'll never see them again. They won't even remember you exist. Let us unify all of humanity in the galaxies under Terra. But that culture you built, yeah, that's got to go. That doesn't work for me. Let us roam the galaxy and bring all of the humans back together under one banner. Unless you're not human enough, unless you've evolved to the point that I haven't decided that you're really human, then you got to go. That's the horror of the 41st millennium. It is giving people a false impression of safety, security, of belonging that really does not exist. The Emperor is a fraud. The Emperor is a liar. I'm going to catch smoke for this in the comments. But the Emperor is the cause of and solution to all the woes of the Imperium of Man. And the Eldar were not wrong, though humans produce some of the most beautiful artifacts to ever exist that the universe has ever seen. We also produce the greatest ugliness the universe has ever seen, and the Eldar wanted to prevent that from spreading. But the Emperor, being the longest lived, the wisest, the most cunning, a super genius, he knows he cannot conquer with words alone, and so he creates his Legiones Astartes and his Primarchs to do his bidding. And in doing so, he sows the seeds of the fall of the Imperium of Man. Because when you raise an army of demigods, it takes an army of demigods to destroy them. What happens if such an army runs unchecked, unfaithful to any cause through the universe, when they're no longer loyal to you and you've turned them into something no human can compete against? The Emperor didn't think that one through. That is the business I stand on. That is one of those hills on which my beautiful corpse shall be laid. But in this month of Halloween, highly advise, if you've not investigated into the lore of the legions, get in there. I mean, if you're not really into horror movies and stuff, I mean, you can only go so far, with novelizations that are for the masses. So, I mean, Angel Exterminatus, Fabi Spa, all those, Fulgrim, yeah, they get weird. They go left. But they don't go so left that you can't take it. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's like when there used to be a PG-13. Like when PG-13 and R used to mean something, like it's on that level. So highly recommend digging into the lore if you're looking for things to pick up. If you don't know where to start, I started with in the Warhammer lore with Eisenhorn. I've said it 1,000 times. You can pick it up. I think the easiest way to get a hold of it now is on Kindle, because a lot of those books aren't printed anymore. The big ones, you have to like find them used, and they're real expensive used. And just start in the Horus Heresy. There is a fantasy side of Warhammer. I don't investigate that very much, because she's a sci-fi nerd and she loves Lord of the Rings. But yeah, give those a look, give those a read. Sometimes on a rainy night, I hope we get some rainy nights in October. It's good to curl up with a good military sci-fi, a good story like that, and then just have your own little novel experience. I hiccuped. So with that, the horror of the Space Marine. What do you think? Thoughts, comments? I know I'm gonna catch hell in them comments this time for the algorithm. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.